What I think brands are observing for Amazon also, that only Amazon ads is not the only way to grow their sales on Amazon. That be one of the reason why you have grown sustainably.
If you do not improve your product, questions that people get asked, hey, your product can be copied, right? What can be copied is the product that you put out in the market. What cannot be copied is actually the kind of insights that you have. You wouldn't believe me, after we launched, we went out of stock in February, we went out of stock by March.
Marketplaces versus own website, or I should say Amazon versus Shopify.
Between Shopify and Amazon, if you ask me what I like, of course I like Shopify more because
If any entrepreneur kicks up quickly, what are the challenges that you face that they should be prepared on?
if you don't have a product market fit or if you're not able to sell, then the problem is different. You will have to keep experimenting, figuring out either with multiple products or different categories, etc.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining here. This is Sunny Wadhwani, founder of Growpreneur. Welcome to this show, Add to Cart with Sunny Wadhwani, where I think some of you might be aware of that I used to run this in LinkedIn in 2024 in the audio format, coming back exactly after 1 year with a video format. Currently remotely, never know, we might go offline in future, but really excited to share all the learnings, insights, experiences from all our founders or industry leaders in the form of add to cart. And then you as an audience can apply as per your brand, as per your category, as per your experiences, and then choose which all you want to buy for your own set of brand. So today we have a very special guest whom I know. I think it's been since 1 year we've been connected, and I feel very fortunate to be connected with her, the way she has grown a brand. I'm talking about Miss Harini Rajagopalan. Thanks, Harini, for joining here and being my first guest in this video format.
Thanks so much for this opportunity, Sunny.
Yes,
Also, it's been great working with you over the last year.
yeah, same here, same here. We'll talk more detailedly a little later, but just a short intro about her. Her experience is full of diversity. She's done her MBA from INSEAD. She's worked in Myntra. She's also ex-Amazon, and she's building a wonderful brand into the kids space, which is actually solving a problem. So it's not only a brand only for the sake of business. It's actually solving a problem for the kids. So, Harini, please add if anything I missed on the intro.
Perfect, right? So I think overall, the core thesis, we launched Basil in February last year, right? And the core thesis is that there are lots of brands for babies in the 0 to 3 year old segment, lots of brands for adults. But when it comes to kids in the 4 to 12 segment, there's nothing at all for them. And that's pretty much why Basil came into existence. Happy to talk through the journey.
Yeah. So first, very similar question to this. I think you worked in Myntra. You have been an ex-Amazonian as well. What made you start Basic? The reason I'm asking is from two aspects. Once a person works for few years in Amazon, I've also been ex-Amazon, so I know the comfort level which you get into Amazon because it's a huge risk leaving a high-paying job at Amazon and then starting your own brand because you take a step back, you start from scratch, your income goes down, and second, why only not talking about the brand name, but why Lunchboxes, and then we'll deep dive it later.
See, I mean, it's perfect that I worked at Amazon, but I think I started my career as a brand manager with Johnson& and Johnson. That was more than 15 years ago. Predominantly spent the last decade in early e-commerce, right? And that I think 2011, 12, I kind of jumped into a very early stage startup called Urban Touch. That was a
Perfect.
time when e-commerce didn't come into existence. We sold fashion, jewelry, etc. for women. It got acquired. Post then, I've predominantly been in e-commerce, like Flipkart in 2012, 13, 14, Myntra, did a couple of stints with Tiny
Mm.
On and other food tech startups. So I've always been very early stage startup person. And as e-commerce grew in India, I think some of these startups became really big. Amazon happened. I mean, Amazon was also an e-commerce startup, right? Like in 2012, 2013, and then since grown. I've always wanted to be in startup and I've always wanted to run a business of my own, right? So that's been I think that was something that I decided back in 2010. So every career move after that was driven, uh, you know, uh, you know, largely to kind of accumulate experiences that will help me become confident in this journey. I think around 2021, 2022, COVID, I think everybody kind of had a realization that was this like kind of like a perfect time to get into building a business on their own. And I think
Right.
I was financially, to be very honest, given that I'd worked over 10 years, I kind of have seen a lot of, high growth years, bad years where,
That.
startups shut down, there's no funding. So I've kind of seen this growth multiple times
Right.
that I was comfortable to kind of take this jump, right? I knew that I would come out of it. It wouldn't matter. You'd have hard years, but you'd also have good years. So I've seen this cycle a lot of times. So it was not very scary experience for me at that point in time. Wanted to build something very large, and I thought that there is an opportunity to build 100,000 crore company. So that's pretty much why I got into it.
Okay, so just continuing to it, how did you decide the category?
So I think for me, primarily, I wanted to operate in a business that is fundamentally profitable, right? I think what I've
Yeah.
seen over the years is where there's a lot of burn, your ROAs is low, you're heavily dependent on lifetime revenues. That's where businesses struggle. So I wanted to I was essentially looking for opportunities where every order I'll be able to make money. Right.
Perfect.
I looked at multiple different categories, multiple different segments from personal care to home cleansing to, of course, lunchbox. But I also explored sleep because it's a huge problem, right? Like I think 2021, a lot of us millennials, we couldn't really sleep.
Right.
So there was a huge problem to solve. But essentially, I kind of looked at all categories. I wanted to be really differentiated because I think one way to make money on every order is that you should not have a lot of competition, right? Like, I mean, you need to offer a product that is clearly differentiated that solves the user need. So when I evaluated a lot of these categories, I realized that Lunchbox as a category has a potential to be profitable at an order level. And
Okay.
that's one of the reasons I kind of picked it. But also, it was a personal problem for me at that point in time, right? I was evaluating multiple different categories. Lunchbox was not the first category. I was essentially looking at personal care and a lot of these, categories that everybody considers.
Right.
But my kids had just started school. So post COVID, I was looking for a lunchbox and I wanted a bento box. Couldn't really find one in the market that was good looking but also durable at the same time. I was having a problem. I looked at Amazon listings. Everything was just the same kind of generic, something that I wouldn't really buy for my children because I was in the moms community, right? And I had access to a lot of moms and parents. Kind of spoke to 500 plus moms at that point in time, and looked like Lunchbox was an all-pervasive problem that every mom was facing. So that pretty much, was like the kind of seed into looking at and evaluating Lunchbox category very seriously. That's where it started.
Got it. So, in continuing to it, so that anyone is watching the video and wants to know about the Basil as a brand or as the products, what is a bento lunchbox? And second, what do we exactly mean here? BPA free, plastic free, and
Yeah.
last is matlab, we are selling around 1700, 1800 for a lunchbox with the two or three compartments, where in the market it's already there between and it varies from 400 to 1000. What is the differentiation which is actually solving a problem for small kids as a market that is related to their health?
Got it. Let me first quickly, take like a couple of minutes to kind of talk about Basil and what we actually want to solve and how kind of Lunchbox fits into this entire ecosystem. Like I said, we want to be the go-to brand for kids in the 4 to 12 years old segment, right? And Lunchbox is essentially the first category that we are operating in. Right? And we would essentially get into bags, schools, stationery, etc. for kids. So when it comes to lunchbox, right? I think when we were all young, we used to take this kind of tiered dabbas, right? Like three stackable dabbas, three kind of three-layer dabbas to school. But if you actually talk to moms, and I'll come to why bento box is a trend, right? I think the fundamental problem is that kids and moms do not want to carry stackable dabbas because they essentially
Right.
want the dabba to get into the backpacks these days, right? And what they're essentially looking for is like a sleek lunchbox, right? It's very similar to a lunch tray, right? That's what a bento box is. Bento box is essentially a Japanese way of carrying food. It's
Okay.
very similar to our thali system, right? Like we have our
Okay.
thali plates, which has multiple compartments, portioned meals, etc. So bento box is essentially the Japanese comparison to that, and it's become famous worldwide. The reason it's become famous worldwide is that it's a very sleek tray. You can carry multiple portion, like three portions, four or five portions into this tray, and you can just put it into your backpack. Now the problem is As a form factor, this is something that most moms prefer because it's easy for a child to hold, carry, etc. And it's easy to fit into the bag. And moms do want to send 3 or 4 items to the children, largely because children are picky eaters. They would eat a little bit of everything. Some moms also want to kind of give a balanced nutrition meal where there's a little bit of protein, there's a little bit of dal, there's a little bit of chapati, etc. Right? And there's also a snack or a fruit, right? So from a balanced portioning perspective, and for picky eaters, this is pretty much the form factor that moms were looking for. Now, before, it's not that there were no bento boxes before us, right? There were bento boxes before us, but there were two fundamental problems. One, from a functional perspective, most bento boxes in the market were actually not leak proof. They claim to be leak proof, but dal and water would start actually leaking out
Right.
of the product. Even if they're leak proof for 1 day or 2 days, they don't last for more than 1 week because they use very poor quality silicon, etc., from a functionality perspective. The second piece is the aesthetics piece, or the sophistication, or the good looks piece, right? Most of the bento boxes in the market are just solid colors, no illustration. I mean, but if you look for Basil bento boxes and other bento boxes, you'd know what the visual looks and aesthetics looks are like. So these were the two core differences and reasons we solved for. Now, of course, from a consumer persona perspective, right? Like, we did a lot of research. Who are we targeting? And we clearly targeting metro millennial moms in urban cities, right?
Right.
We're not targeting tier two, tier three, at least not now. I think what's super important for them is great quality of materials that are being used in the product, right? Of course, there are multiple grades of stainless steel. For example, there's 304 stainless steel, but there's also 220 series of stainless steel. The difference is 304 does not develop rust. 20 series, if you don't maintain it well, can develop rust, but can also get dented a lot more easily, right? And we, of course, we make the entire product in stainless steel. Most brands before us, they use a lot of plastic. Of course, even though plastic is BPA free, can be toxin free, moms do not want to give plastic to their children at all because
Right.
there's a huge psychological barrier in India. And India has always been a steel market, right? We invested a lot. I'm not getting into a lot of details, but we invested a lot in terms of product design, form factor, shape, number of compartment sizes, weight of the product, etc., to kind of arrive at a final concept product that consumers would actually love to give to their children and also carry to the office themselves, right? So that's where we started. I think you also touched upon price point. But before we get into price point, I'll also talk a little bit about, how you can identify niches, right? Like, I think we also use Amazon to identify niches, right? While we knew and moms said that they wanted a form factor like bento box, I think if you just look at search volumes for bento box, you would realize that there is actually a decent search volume with no brand
Right.
out there, right? So that's also a way to validate if there is a market for it. But coming back to price point, I think the entire lunchbox category in India, if you were to look at Amazon, is a 400 rupee price point category, right?
Correct.
Like, good quality is a 700 rupee price point category. But we have like a product at an 1800 price point, and it's been doing pretty well, right? Like, it's for its price point, you wouldn't expect it to fly. And I think I had
Right.
underestimated myself. But we've got the biggest problem has always been inventory, as opposed to we are left with a lot of inventory and we're not able to scale. That's largely been the story throughout the year. But we've also spoken to a lot of our consumers. For example, we do know that our product can be made a lot more better than what it is now. And there are multiple different ways to make it better, right? You can change the lid to plastic. I'm not getting into the details, but you can make the hinge and the way it's manufactured better. So one option would give you a product. The plastic option would give you a product at a lower price point. Making the hinge better would give you a product at a higher price point. And you wouldn't believe it. Most of our consumers actually said they would pay 500 rupee more if the product is completely made in stainless steel, right? Because to them, it's like one coffee from a Starbucks or a third wave.
Right. That's true.
I can spend so much for my children, right? So I think there is also this breed of parents who don't have 5 kids, they only have one or two, but
Right.
they're willing to spend a lot more on their children, right? And, for good quality that would come for a year. Another insight that we revealed is that consumers and moms also look at a product price point in terms of value. For example, they say, yes, there are lunchbox in the market at 700 rupees, but that's one compartment or at max two compartments. I need to give side dish, I need to give fruits. So if I were to put things together, it would be like anyway very similar to what your price point is. So there is also the entire value piece as opposed to just the pricing piece when you're pricing.
Got it. So, I won't keep this as rigid as per my questions. So, a lot of interesting stuff came out what you spoke in the last few minutes. First is that, which usually people don't do today. So this shows that you have continuously improved your product over a span of 1 to 2 years by regularly talking with your consumers. Could that be one of the reasons why you have grown sustainably?
So you have to do it, right? Because I'll tell you what will happen if you do not improve your product. So there is always a questions that people get asked. Hey, your product can be copied, right? Like you have a
Right,
great
right.
product today, it's giving you 4 ROS, but someone else will copy the same thing. Like, how are you going to sustain it? So what can be copied is the product that you put out in the market. What cannot be copied is actually the kind of insights that you have, and hence
Perfect.
your product development ultimately for early stage startups where there's no brand name yet, right? That's like at a 50 crore 100 crore revenue stage. The 0 to 100 is largely built on great products, and the only thing that helps build great products is insights, right? So I think the minute we launched, we knew that our product needs to be improved. Since then, we have invested in three products, each solving a different problem that consumers have. All consumers are not alike. There are different consumers and they want a different approach to solving the same problem. And we've invested in multiple different products, but we've also improved our original product as well, right? Like everything from, what the lid decal
Perfect.
or the print method is. The first lot, it would peel off very quickly. So we improved it multiple different times, right? Similarly, your open and close was a problem. You wouldn't believe me. After we launched, we went out of stock in February. We went out of stock by March. April, we decided to not send products to the marketplaces, etc., because we were very confused. See, leak proof and open and close, for example, in a lunchbox is a trade-off call. You can make
Mm.
the lunchbox very easy to open and close, but it would leak. You can make the lunchbox hard to open and close and it wouldn't leak, right? So you have to find that subtle balance. So we were sitting there thinking, hey, is this too hard to close, too easy to close, etc. And we didn't, or if it is too easy to close, if a little bit of oil comes out, is that going to be a problem? We were just sitting there thinking. But then one day we decided, let's just send it out to market. If customers return, let them return, right? But at least we'll get some insights based on what customers say. And that's pretty much what we did. And we realized that, even the consumers wanted to be leak proof. They are okay if a little bit of, oil and things like that, very tiny bit leaks out. They are okay. They're actually not complaining because probably they're not even sending oil in lunches.
Right. That's true. That's true. Very interesting. Which brands really don't do today. They just list the products and focus on the other stuff and miss out on this one thing that talking to consumers is the main thing. They are the ones who will help you grow
Yeah,
and improve your products.
yeah.
So one thing which came out of your conversation only clear about this category, or clear about the audience, or clear about the product quality. When you were about to start, very one important question that has been arising in this D2C ecosystem in the last 1 year, marketplaces versus own website. Was it any confusion? I know people sell on both the platforms, but how did you took when you started, and what is your take on it right now? Or I should say Amazon versus Shopify.
Amazon and Shopify both are very large channels for us and very neck to neck, right? Like Shopify is bigger than Amazon for us. See, I believe right now that, when you launch, if you have limited inventory, you try to crack one channel and that
Right,
works for you, right? And the only way to crack it is actually by trying all the channels, right? Like for example, for us, you'd have to try Shopify, you'd have to try Amazon. But if you're now a food brand or an FMCG brand, you'd probably try quick commerce, right?
right.
But essentially, try one platform and prove that platform. We started with Shopify. We didn't start with Amazon. Like what I mean by started is I'm just talking about the first 1 month, right?
Mhm.
But we listed very quickly onto Amazon as well. Our experience had been different. Both the channels fired immediately. We had product, market, and price fit for both the channels, and it worked
Got it.
wonderful for us. Now, I may not say the same about other marketplaces, right? But these two channels fired. Now, and I think as a founder, you'll have to find more channels, right? I
Right.
think it's never that if one channel does well, your sale on the other channel is dropping. That's
Yeah.
never the case.
Yeah.
Channels grow on their own. Of course, there is a little bit of loss of revenue, etc., cannibalization. But I've done a lot of correlation analysis to kind of test it in the early few months, and I realized that they're not very strongly correlated. You might as well test all channels that you have. Between Shopify and Amazon, if you ask me what I like, of course I like Shopify more because it's not just about data. As a channel, it's a lot more profitable than Amazon. But also, most importantly, because we do a lot of consumer research, right? It's easy for me to do consumer research with Shopify, right? And
Right. That's true.
every time a customer returns a product, a lot of these can actually be solved for. In Amazon, a return is just a return, right? In Shopify, it's mostly exchange, or they also talk to us, they give us insights,
That's good.
etc. So from a channel perspective for a brand, I think having an own website gives you a lot more inputs and insights. But yeah, like find as many channels where you can find product market fit. Every channel will have its limit. I don't know what the limit is yet, right? But live with it. And now that we have four categories, we have plates, zippers. I realize that channels like Blinkit, for example, zippers might be a better product category to invest in than Lunchbox. First Cry, for example, plates is a better product category because the age group is slightly different there. So yeah, find your product market, channel price fit across channels.
Got it. Just one thing to in order to confirm the consumers, if they want to buy Basil, they can see Basil on website, Amazon, FirstCry, Flipkart, and Blinkit. Is there any other platform which they
Just launched Mintra. We just
you just
launched
launched, Mintra? Okay, so they have option to buy from six, but you'll prefer to buy them from their
Shopify
website.
website. Yes.
Okay, got it. When you mentioned on product market fit, a very one thing that comes to consumers, what all did you do? I know you would have searched on Amazon, you would have used Helium 10, you would have seen a lot of trends. What was that duration? Did you went to multiple factories,
Yeah.
supply, and all those visits? How much was that duration? Because
Yeah.
the reason why I'm asking on this, because so that people don't think that since you had spent 10 years in e-commerce, was that one of the reasons? Again, if someone wants to start from scratch, they shouldn't see this as a fortunate thing that we are from e-commerce, so that it would be easier for us. Even if someone is coming from non-e-commerce background, they would be able to scale it. So
Yeah.
maybe in few words, if you can specify it, what was your journey of that product market fit? If that helps maybe the aspiring future D2C entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So the first difference is we make custom products, right? We don't buy products from the market. There are brands
Okay,
which buy products from the market as well.
okay, perfect.
That approach is about looking at Alibaba, finding a product and
Right.
sourcing it. We make custom products, which essentially means that when we launch a product, there is no other product like this in the market. It's our own design, patent. We do the CAD drawings, etc. We
Got it.
patent the designs, then look for factories who can manufacture it for them. We invest in molds in that factory, or that factory invests in molds for us, but it's only for us, right? Because the design is protected, the molds are protected. Nobody else can have the same product in the market. This is actually a way of building moat, at least temporarily, right? Like for the first or 2 years, so that the market is not flooded with a like to like product. Now, in this case, it essentially makes the launch process a lot more lengthier, right? Because it's
Right.
custom product, you have to identify a factory. It's experimentation essentially, right? And given that we operate in sheet metal, there is a lot of time that goes into developing the mold, doing trials, making that every part and assembly is perfect. So between the time I started working on this category and I had the designs with me to actually launching in the market was about 9 to 10 months,
Got it.
right? That nine. So I spent anyway 3 4 months prior to that in arriving at the design, what product to have, etc. Right? Like after developing the drawing, it took about 9 months for me. In this time frame, I probably just spent 1 month identifying factory. When we started with China ecosystem. We started with China manufacturing. Now we also have India manufacturing. India manufacturing or getting the products made in India also has taken about 9 10 months. The duration, I would say, depend on the category you're operating in. Sheet metal is extremely complex and takes 9 to 10. But if you're into, let's say, bags or FMCG, you'll probably get out much faster.
ठीक
I
है.
didn't have contacts. I had to cultivate the entire manufacturing piece from ground zero.
Got it. So now, listening to this, I think the audience would seem that everything was as per the plan, but it wouldn't have been. Product market fit, we launched, we kicked up in Amazon, in Shopify. We are present on six marketplaces. But I think you would also see when we kick in, then sometimes there is also a fall which comes in between. So maybe if any entrepreneur kicks up quickly, what are the challenges that you face that they should be prepared on? I know you touched upon inventory was one of the issues. Second was the product quality. Maybe you can describe more about the challenges, irrespective of whether they are selling on Amazon as an e-commerce marketplace or even on their own website, which is
Yeah,
bound to come because
yeah.
they won't be getting success on every step.
Yeah. So if you don't have a product market fit, or if you're not able to sell, then the problem is different, right? Like you will have to keep experimenting, figuring out either with multiple products or different categories, etc., to kind of solve that piece. We had product market fit. Now there are two problems when you have product market fit, right? When you have PMF, it essentially means that you're scaling fast. Now, if you're a very small startup, as you scale, you make a lot of mistakes, right? And
Right.
most of these mistakes are in operations and customer experience,
Got
right?
it.
This starts with as simple as not being able to fulfill orders correctly, not being able to fulfill, running short of manpower, to also product quality issues because QC was not set up that rigorously as a process, right? That's one piece. The second piece is, even if you solve these ops problem, I think in the first 1 year there you have no idea in terms of
Mm,
demand cycles, right? We projected a huge growth in OND quarter, but we couldn't
got it.
grow during OND at all, right? Like um, either because we were a small brand and then we were getting beaten in terms of CPMs, etc., or probably the category is not really an OND category, right? Like both,
Got it.
I would say both contributed. So we projected a lot for OND, but we didn't grow. But we started growing excessively from JFM quarter, and we had no inventory, right? Like we went
Mm,
completely out of stock. So these problems in terms of forecasting and the stress it creates is obviously one problem. The second is more, I would say, while we have product market fit, the second piece is expansion, right? Like you have momentum, which essentially means as an entrepreneur, you've already learned that there are so many problems that need to be solved and your product can be improved. So you've already have a pipeline of this 5, 6 products that you want to launch. But those launches keep getting
mm,
delayed. So that's another piece that you have to solve for. The reason it gets delayed is because when you're a young brand, you have very limited cash. So if you throw money at problems, it gets solved easily, right? To an extent,
correct.
at least, your manufacturers will pick up. But you also want to be very capital efficient as a young brand, right? So you would want your manufacturers to take in risk. So that is another piece. And apart from that, I think I would say that it's important for very young brands to be capital efficient, because I think the inventory shocks, etc., can very quickly create a problem in the P&L. Needs to be cautious about. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Apart from, of course, the government regulations that keep popping up, creating challenges to categories. Yeah.
Got it. Very interesting point you mentioned on OND. Just to clear, I think he's talking about October, November, December, and JFM is January, February, March. So it's not necessary that every category picks up in festive. Maybe in January it was maybe due to winter vacation getting over.
Yeah.
So in order to forecast inventory, maybe what different are you doing it right now? What would you suggest it to folks? Are you talking about checking the search volumes basis on that they can plan the inventory or anything which you have been doing differently now?
Yeah. See, one thing I have learned so far is, I think the first 6, 7 months, right? I would depend very heavily on category growth, category volumes,
Got it.
etc., to forecast demand. And of course, I would take inputs from, let's say, category manager of Amazon in terms of expected growth and all of that. But what I feel right now is, as a very young brand in the first 1 or 2 years, the better way to just do forecasting is you set the target yourself, because you are too small. Category actually doesn't define your growth significantly. To an extent, yes. On Amazon, maybe yes. But on Shopify, etc., your category growth volume is not going to drive your growth.
No, good.
So the better approach would be for a brand owner to set a target and work towards it. So we started growing since December, and the only difference was we took the second approach, where we decided that every month we will grow 30% or 40%, whatever it takes. The minute you set the target, you also start changing your input targets, right? You will start
Input and
spending more on advertisement. Automatically, the growth will come. But if you don't do it, you just wait for, hey, let me increase advertising targets. If my ROS maintains, then वो नहीं होता है, right? Like it doesn't happen. So yeah, so
got it.
as a young brand, set targets and work towards it, as opposed to taking a lot of inputs on category and relying on category growth numbers, because your growth can be different from the category growth because you're too small, right? But having said that, yeah, you will face issues. I think that's a given.
Got it. So good to see that a brand which is doing on Amazon is doing better on Shopify. Any one or two learnings you want to share? Why it did well, or what are the mistakes that you avoided? Because very rarely it's seen that even brands like, don't want to name any electronics, audio, phones, they're heavily dependent on marketplaces. even today their business is not bigger on their website as compared to marketplaces. What click? Maybe if I could anticipate that you were very clear that you wanted to be profitable, could be one of the reason that it was pretty clear right from the starting.
Yeah, also we offered other services like customization,
Right.
personalization, etc., right? Like which we know are key drivers in this eighth segment. These were available on website. So I was a product manager before this, right? And I think our website was designed for optimizing conversion. So I think I wouldn't want to talk about it myself, but even though our website has a lot of stability issues, I think people have said that, it's a very clean experience and there's hardly anything to point out. And we're actually just upgrading it right now as we speak today. It's happening now in the back end. But I think the website was optimized for conversion. It was very colorful, very playful, lots of product images, right? And I think because we are a very visual and aesthetic brand, we were able to kind of bring that out really well on the website as opposed to Amazon. And I think we cracked a few hooks on Meta really well early on, right? Like, for example, leak proof as a hook, we were able to crack. Multiple different performance marketing hooks that we were able to crack, which kind of helped us grow on Shopify. I don't know why customers trust us more on Shopify than Amazon, to be very honest.
Point I think you touched upon performance marketing because we keep seeing a post a lot on Instagram and on LinkedIn. There's a lot of
Yeah.
gyan happening. The gyan has increased that try this, try that. You as a founder, if you tell on advertising, because what I've heard, I'm not much into Facebook ads, but I've heard that video ads does
Yeah.
better. Is there any specific kind of one or two ads which you would suggest to the audience who are maybe into this or some other category which they should try that can help them do better on their own
So I
website?
would say the only way to figure this out is to experiment, right? Because what works for one brand will not work for another brand. The reason I know this is that I have actually seen some kind of marketing static post, etc., that I know works for the other brands. When I tried it on Basil, it didn't work for us. So as a brand, you will have to figure out what does your target audience want to know or what is going to convince them and run ads accordingly. So when we started, we just started with static or catalog ads where we just showed a great product, right? That's it. There was no marketing. It worked well, but the budgets were really low. But we immediately started video ads, and we knew that the key pain point here is leak proof, right? So some of our early ads, all it would show is it how awesome and how leak proof it is. We would actually have an
Right.
unedited, image of Lunchbox tilting here and there, stuff like that. But essentially, and then we kind of started progressing, right? Like different consumer age segment, we do UGCs as well. But the idea is you have to find what works for you. And the only way to do that is you have to experiment. And to experiment, you have to let go of a little bit of ROAS. For example, when I started, my scale was really low. My ROAS is 7. Now it is not 7, but it is still, you have to let go of that, right? Like if you want to experiment. But the other piece is, of course, now what I have learned is when you're very young, you can just do only performance marketing. What I mean is when you have like only 30 lakhs revenue per month on Shopify, you can probably just do only performance marketing. But beyond that, you will have to do some form of 360, right? You will have to
360.
activate WhatsApp, you will have to activate Instagram organic. Because there was a period of time, April onwards, because we were very low on inventory, I did not do 360. I did only performance. And my ROS actually started becoming poorer. The minute I activated 360, it started improving again. Because technically, Instagram, WhatsApp, Meta ads, they're all just the same ecosystem for Meta, right? And it's all just additional signal. The more signal you give, better. And it's also the same consumers, right? Like you have to keep reminding them again and again. So, yeah, you will have to start with performance and then move to 360 eventually.
So, even what I think brands are observing for Amazon also, that only Amazon ads is not the only way to grow their sales on Amazon. Even there, also, everyone is talking and trying about how social media can help Amazon grow, how
Yeah.
the other stuff can help Amazon
Yeah.
grow. So, we'll touch base on two things. One, when you mentioned on 360, so just wanted to check what are Basil plans or maybe what have they done in the past related to branding or influencer marketing, or is there any plan in future related to this?
Yeah, so far we have been very performance oriented, right? So we spend on Meta, we do growth on WhatsApp. Of course, we do it on all the marketplace channels. We do influencers. The reason we've always done influencers is, for us, influencers is also a source of content that feeds
Right.
into meta ads, right? So we always do influencers. But all of this has been done from the lens of, is this going to improve my sales?
That's
We've
true.
not done brand. So when you start investing in brand, you'll have to be sure and you should know that this might not translate to sales
Not wrong.
immediately.
Right. Got
And
it.
it's a mindset difference. This is something that we have not done so far, and we do want to get started. And we have done a lot of background work on this. But to be very honest, I think we're still a one product kind of company, right? Like, I mean, we have one product, we have other categories, but we still have one product. We're just waiting to launch a few more products over this quarter so that, we can have a proper branded play as opposed to a product play. Because, yeah, I think it's important to do brand. Just need to know when, and you need to know that it's not going to translate into sales immediately. But
Got
it'll
it.
help.
Got it. Got it. Uh, I think the very main point which you mentioned, which people don't do whenever they are making any videos or creating any images, whether for their website or for Amazon, they focus on beautifying the images more. But one differentiation that I could see, that you were selling the end result, that actually it is leak proof. Though your designs are also very differentiated.
Yeah.
When you see the other ones are pretty plain, a pink color, single color, even the inside boxes are also same. So you worked on design, and at the end, you also focused on, I think, which is the end result. That if we
Functionality.
have said leak proof, which is functionality. If we have said leak proof, then it is leak proof. Next thing, you mentioned on ROAS, I think, which is a very this kind of thing on everywhere, which everyone talks about. How have been you able to maintain on Amazon? We talked a lot on Shopify. We'll come back to Amazon now. Was it very clear? You were very clear that I have to maintain this amount of tacos, irrespective. I'm okay to get a hit on sales, but I'm not okay to get a hit on ROAS or tacos.
So, yeah, there is one reason I always had a benchmark on ROAS and tacos. The reason being that we wanted to be order level profitable.
Got
And
it.
one other reason is we're also operating in a category which is a low repeat category,
Low
right?
repeat category.
So if
Got
a
it.
customer
Very good
buys a
point.
lunchbox, they wouldn't buy it again for the next
Again,
6 months. So I
got it.
need to make money there. But these constraints will change when we have a catalog to offer. Right?
Right.
When we, for example, have bags and a range of water bottles, then all of these constraints can be loosened up because
Mhm.
you are then selling a range of products to the same consumer as opposed to just selling one product, right? So all these categories may be actually low repeat categories, but across different categories, customers might buy and they would repeat, and that's what you're looking for. A small example here is the combos, right? So on Amazon also we try combos, on Shopify also we do combos, and combos is now 10% of our revenue. These
Great.
are customers who wouldn't have bought water bottle from us if we
Right.
hadn't
That's
offered
true.
this as a combo,
Perfect.
right? So you still maintain your RAs, you sell two products at one go, you increase your AOV, right? But yeah, so there are different ways to maintain that ROAS and tacos. You can increase your AOV and maintain tacos too.
Got it. So one point I think we haven't been touched upon, would like to touch it, and that's, I think, when we talk about competition, then we only talk about Amazon, Shopify. At least on my listing page, there wouldn't be any competitor visible. But that's not the case on Amazon. What was your experience? Did you face any of these issues of like what we've been hearing, that competitor is writing negative reviews on you? You saw that there are big players like Milton, Cello, and then few other also brands came up into the picture who were already very cheaper than us. How did you took this? I know you had already researched upon before as well, but when you start selling, then it starts hitting your mind that yes, there are players who are actually selling at a lesser cost and more
Yeah.
traditional, more branding. Then what was your take on it? And was there any negative experience you also faced that this might be competitor because I'm new and I've scaled rapidly? You started seeing any problem or something, a wrong thing which you saw it from the competitor?
To be very honest, I mean, we do get negative reviews, but I believe those reviews may be from customers. I
Customers,
don't
right?
know if it is competition or customer. There's probably no way to actually
No way
pinpoint
to.
and
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
right? Like, unless there is a deluge of reviews, like 100 reviews in a day, taking your rating down, I don't know if it's a competitor or if it's a consumer. It could be competitor too, but it is okay. It's part and parcel, right? You can't do much about it. I think the only thing that you can do is what you can control, which
Right.
is how do you give better products at better pricing, at better value, right? So just focus on what you can control as opposed to what your
Right.
competition is doing. Having said that, we have had cases where, there have been sellers who've tried to infringe on our trademarks, right?
Right. Got it.
Trademarks, protections, etc., where we have actually raised legal cases, issues, right? Like, I mean, in the legal part. So that's more around patent infringement, trademark infringement, etc. And I think India probably is not as strong as US when it comes to trademark infringement and patent
Got
infringement,
it.
but there are legal ways to do that. But I think overall at Basil, at least so far, we've been focusing a lot more on consumers and what problems to solve, because I honestly feel that lunchbox as a category has just been so stale. There's just a lot more to do and bring freshness to this category. And the same for the entire kids category, right? So there is
Got it.
no need to obsess so much about competition as much as what you can obsess about consumers.
Great point. And I think a very good point which you mentioned that the things we can control. You mentioned on product quality, you mentioned on the pricing. Which are the other factors, especially from Amazon? And I know we are review rating, delivery rate. If you could just count and help the audience so that apart from pricing and product quality, there are also other
So
factors which they can control.
availability, right? I think the biggest, at least what I've seen is, so pricing is decided. You cannot change it. Once you've
Change it.
invested in
Yeah.
a product, that's the pricing. At max, you can go 20, 30 here and there.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Invest in promotions like buy two, get one or coupons and stuff like that. But largely, it's margin related. You
Correct.
can't
Very
change
true.
it a lot. Same goes for product, right? But I think what can actually drive conversion very quickly in Amazon is in stock availability and IXD, right? Like making it, for example, when a lunchbox is only available in Bangalore, right? Like conversion
Got
is
it.
lower across India. So how quickly you can get IXD, how many more warehouses, basically get closer to customers, right? So pretty much just that, like get closer, get like whatever, get the selection that they need, get it closer to them, get it at a price point that is
Got it.
good enough.
And maybe explaining all these features in a much premium way in the images and that A plus content.
Yeah, A plus content. I think you need to invest in reviews also in some way
Yeah,
or the other. You need to, for example, when we launched, I actually asked some of the customers, a lot of my customers who wanted to buy on Shopify, I told them to buy on Amazon and place a review there, right? So I
got
think
it.
you need to do that because it helps in conversion, at least when you're kicking it off. You cannot replicate all of it on
Yeah.
Amazon, but how much ever you can try to do that. But I think, yeah, Amazon has its constraints in terms of ad format, premiumness. I mean, like, I can't create a premium brand in Amazon. It's harder,
That's true. That's
but
true.
yeah.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And one of the last few very questions now, when I think you mentioned on this is very important for anyone who's jumping into a category which is a little seasonal. Now, I think you already mentioned, maybe you can touch base upon, like for example, in North India, schools reopen in April.
Yeah,
In South, I think if I'm not wrong, they open in June, July.
yeah.
And you mentioned that usually the sale period for this as a category is not that big. So what are your plans? And especially for the ones when they now you've already got to know that a period that wouldn't work it for you. So how do you tackle this? Is it only related with new products or is it all about creating the market at that point of time?
So, see, of course, the way we are looking at it is I'm actually looking for a category within the kids' context that will give me O&D revenue growth. Because in the
Got it.
long run, when you're really big, when you're very small, you can just do category channel expansion. You can, for
That's true.
example, do if you are at, for example, if Basil is at a price point that might work in the US, we can try US, and maybe we can try to say that last quarter we will, US will contribute equal to Amazon in the last quarter and things like that. When you're small, you can do all of this. But in the long run, when you become really big, the category, you're going to follow the category. Right. So if a
Right.
category doesn't grow in O&D, of course we did, for example, we know that gifting as an occasion in corporate is a
Okay.
huge channel in O&D. And that is something that we did last year. And it's something that we can do this year as well. But
Got
in
it.
the long run, it is going to be category. Category will control your growth. So I think long run, if we have to be sorted, we have to find a category that grows in O&D. So it has to be non-school category. It has to be stationery or something which picks up in the O&D quarter, or like something around the electronics for kids.
One very important question, maybe out of the brand, since you've been into e-commerce since it incepted in India, uh, you have seen that pre-COVID era and you would have seen that 2013-14 when Amazon entered India. And then 18, 19, when all these tempered glasses, beauty brands started coming in 19, exactly before COVID. And then when COVID happened, things surged up. And then at that point of time, it was Grofers. They were delivering next day. And then
Coupon.
Zepto came. Yeah, Zepto came in 21, 22. Now everything is into 10 minutes delivery. Amazon is about to go live with Amazon now. Flipkart minutes will be live. What do you think? Since there would be no better person than you, you would have spent, I think, around 12 to 15 years into this industry, and I've seen all these things closely, and you are also selling on all these marketplaces, irrespective of e-commerce or quick commerce. Where do you see this Indian D2C or startup e-commerce ecosystem going in the next 3, 5 years? Where do you see future of Amazon, and where do you see Blinkit, Zepto, Instamart? Will they grow or will they become stable?
Yeah, so I'll just take the consumer view and also a brand view, and I'll try to give an answer. A consumer wants everything in 10 minutes, right? Or a consumer will want everything next minute. So, it is actually a no-brainer to say that, quick commerce or the shorter time is what is going to actually continue to grow, right? And that's where the market will eventually transition towards. But I'll give you the other view, which is the brand's view or the supply chain view, right? Let's take the kirana or the distributor network, right? Like
Right.
you find FMCG kiranas. They're there everywhere because the volume is just so high. But let's look at categories like, let's say, bags or lunch boxes or, appliances, electronics. You don't find them in kiranas, right?
That's true.
Reason being that the volume that's circulating is not as high as in FMCG. Now,
That's true.
because of this, the current model that, let's say, quick commerce has, which is dark store, everything in 10 minutes, everything has to be in the dark store, that is not scalable for a bunch of categories where you cannot lock so much working capital. And FMCG can lock enough working capital because the circulation, the turns are pretty
Right.
high,
That's
right?
true. That's
For
true.
for these categories, like for where I am operating in, I cannot afford to lock my working capital, so
That's
much
true.
of working capital across all dark stores. Now, how does this get solved in the long term? Either Blinkit, etc., will have to actually do a lot more data intelligence, figure out which are the dark stores that are worth pursuing for some of these brands, some of these categories, and get to 10 minutes there. And everywhere else, you probably get to them in like 30 minutes or 2 hours or, 1 day or 2 day, depending on where you're operating. So eventually, across different categories, it will be a mix of 10 and, like longer lead times depending on consumer demand for that category. Grocery, FMCG, personal care, etc. is probably just going to be 10 minutes few years from now.
Got it. So two things here. Does it mean that for categories like Basil, where we are operating, the way it clicked quickly for Amazon and
Won't scale
Shopify
on quick commerce.
won't scale on quick?
The reason is it's not because of lack of demand. It may not be a smart choice
Smart
for
choice.
a brand, especially because, see, I think when you're very young and very early, you need cash, right?
That's true.
So Amazon and Shopify, why they are awesome is because you get cash out very quickly. There is no
That's true.
inventory that is locked. If you have a 3 month trade term with your manufacturer, it is good enough. You will start making cash, right? Like you will start seeing cash. But on the other hand, platforms like Blinkit, Zepto, etc., there could be a bunch of dark stores where you're sitting on 6 months inventory because they have the minimum 2, 3 inventory requirement.
Inventory
And as a
requirement.
brand, you would probably make a choice that this is not something that I want to do. Which is also why you don't see as many, let's say in house care, home care, whatever, housewares category, you don't see as many distributors or you don't see as many stores, right? Like
That's true.
last mile stores as compared, it'll have to be very similar. Your dark store
Yeah,
will have to also evolve in a very similar manner.
that's
Not
true.
all dark stores need to store. For example, in Bangalore, in the pin codes where I am in, which I know is a very, modern pin code, we are completely out of stock. But there are a bunch of pin codes where my inventory is sitting, right? Nobody's buying from there. So I think, there is still a little bit of data intelligence gap that I'm sure these guys will solve over time. They'll figure out which dark store, which category, which price point, and they'll be able to map it. But pretty much for these categories, that's what is going to happen, right? Like there'll be certain categories where you'll get it in 10 minutes, certain pin codes where you'll get in 10 minutes, certain pin codes where you'll get in um, um, 1 hour, in certain pin codes where you'll get in 1 day. But right now, some of these brands might choose to continue to prioritize Amazon and all the other traditional e-commerce channels over quick commerce because it can lock your working capital.
Got it. I think I'm done with my questions. Thanks for giving you
Thanks
so
so
much
much.
time. We'll just have two sections in the end. One is the rapid fire, and second, just wanted to understand what would you suggest to an aspiring B2C entrepreneur today in the form of 2 to 3 learnings? Whether is it very difficult now to make a D2C brand right now? Is it very capital heavy? Or third, if you would have made a brand today and when you were researching on category, would you have also thought very seriously about quick commerce?
At that point in time, I didn't think about quick commerce, but if I was starting a brand right now, I would have probably thought quick commerce first as opposed to Amazon first. I still thought Amazon first and website first at that point in time because quick commerce were very strong. Now I would at least look for categories that have a potential to scale in quick commerce pretty fast because that's where it's easier to scale when there is a lot of growth, right? Like when there is month on month growth is what you want to see, and right now it's quick commerce which is giving that. So I would look at it that it pretty much leaves personal care and
Yeah,
FMCG and food, which are again very competitive categories.
yeah, that's
um
true.
yeah, so it's pretty much the same call, right? Like, do you want to operate in a very competitive category versus
That's
you want to
that's
operate
true.
in a profitable category? It's your psyche, what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, last, if you just want to share about the growth, maybe in terms of percentage, where are you and what are your plans in the next 6 months, 1 years, anything you want to share?
Yeah, so I think we launched in February last year. We've scaled pretty rapidly, like more than 1 crore in monthly net revenue within 1 year. That's where we are. I do want to, like, over the next year, from an input perspective, launch more categories, go deeper into Lunchbox, find my OND golden duck in some way, and hopefully at least grow 5 times in terms of revenue, right? That's pretty much what we
Okay.
have in terms of plans.
Perfect. I'm done. I think towards the end, we'll just have rapid fire. Just have 5 questions which you have to just answer quickly. So, are you ready?
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Your favorite D2C brand?
Zook, Chumbak, and
Great.
there is actually a brand called Boo. It's a notebook brand that's there
Okay.
on Blinkit. I love their designs, and I keep buying their notebooks every week.
Okay. And if you get a chance to go on a dinner or a lunch with any entrepreneur, who would it be?
I'm just going to slightly rephrase this because I think I would like to, not technically an entrepreneur, but there's one person who I've always been inspired by, I think Sheryl Sandberg. And while she's not an entrepreneur, I think, she's done a lot for women entrepreneurship and women in
Right.
general and very early stage. So yeah, she's been a source of inspiration. She's not very active now, but yeah.
One lesson you knew you wish before launching.
Mm, I think I still get very stressed when I see a new problem. But I think one thing is, like, problems are always going to be there when you're running a business or when you're starting up, right?
Got
So
it.
yeah, so just chill with
Uh,
it.
USP or your brand, Basil personality in one sentence.
Bold, playful, and unapologetically unique.
Perfect. And your next destination on your bucket list.
And it's not a bucket list. I'm anyway going to Maldives in a few days.
Okay, that's it. That's it. I think this is it. Thanks for giving. At least it's close to 1 hour. We plan to do it in a shorter period of time, but ठीक है, hopeful. I hope the audience would have got a lot of learnings, a lot of insights and experiences. Uh, Anything, just last words if you want to share about any learnings or how was your experience in the last 1 hour?
No, I think whatever said and done, I mean, there are problems, there are good things and bad things, but I think it's just a lot of fun to build something on their own. So, I mean, if you're interested, just go ahead and do it. It definitely is fun.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving your time. I think, Vinny, it was nice catching up with you again. And hopefully we do it again in future when Basil is at that 5x growth so that we can relook back to this
Yeah.
podcast again.
Thank